Hi there. Welcome back to the weird side of YouTube. I'm your host, author DC Knipe, and this is The Reading Storm. So, to bring back my reading content, I wanted it to connect to what I'm writing currently, which is, if you may or may not know, Fairy Tales Omnia Arcana, which is going to be a YouTube storybook series about your favorite fairy tales and mythology and legends. And so I wanted to read, first and foremost, I wanted to read what the first chapter is going to be about, which is about King Arthur. Now, the stories of King Arthur are quite long, and I probably couldn't fit them into one video, and I really want to condense these into one video segments. So I'm using Cliff Notes. We are reading Cliff Notes today. Haven't read this since college. So, and I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to change about it, because you're going to have to watch the show. I like to keep my surprises surprises. Alright, unsheath your swords, gentlemen, let's get started. I don't know how to pronounce this, so don't make fun of me. Le Morte or Le Morte d'Arthur tells the story of King Arthur and his knights at the Round Table. Arthur, who is the son of King Uther Pendragon, but was raised by another family, takes his rightful place as king when, as a boy, he is able to pull the sword called Excalibur from the stone. Although he rules wisely and is counseled by Merlin the magician, Arthur makes enemies of other kings and is often at war. When Arthur marries Guinevere, her father gives Arthur the Round Table, at which 150 men can sit. Guinevere, who is often present at the convening of the Round Table, acts as moral compass to the knights, rewarding knights who behave well and chastising those who choose poorly. Mallory specifically relates to the stories of Sir Gawain, Sir Tor, and Sir Pellinore as means of introducing the concept of chivalry. Arthur is nearly betrayed by his sister, Morgan Le Fay, but he is helped by Nynaeve, a sorceress, who learned her magic powers from Merlin before killing him. Arthur then fights the Romans when Emperor Lucius of Rome demands that Arthur bow to him. Although the war requires several battles, Arthur and his knights win and return to Guinevere and the other wives. Soon after, Lancelot establishes himself as the greatest knight in all the world by his virtue, loyalty, and bravery. At the same time, Sir Gareth, Gawain's brother, proves valiant in his adventures. Tristram, also known as Tristan, who is the son of King Meliodas de Leon, I think that's how you pronounce it, and the sister of King Mark of Cornwall, is then introduced and his adventures unfold. He kills Sir Marhault to free his uncle from a debt owed to King Anguish of Ireland. That's probably not how you pronounce it, but it looks like how you pronounce it. Anguish. It's probably Gaelic, which means I will never figure out how to pronounce it. I'll have to look it up. Anguish of Ireland, and then falls in love with Isolde, also known as Isolde, Anguish's daughter. Isolde marries Tristram's uncle Mark, but Tristram and Isolde remain lovers. Spicy. Tristram is exiled by Mark, which means he can no longer use his true identity. Thus he fights as the Knight with the Black Shield. Tristram duels and beats many of Arthur's knights, but is eventually thrown in prison and becomes ill. He escapes and eventually meets and fights Lancelot in a duel predicted by Merlin. They become the best of friends. Who becomes best of friends? Him and Lancelot or him and Merlin? Or all three? Lancelot, who is in love with and completely loyal to Guinevere, rides one day in search of adventure. He kills a dragon, sees the Grail, and is tricked into lying with Pellis's daughter Elaine, with whom he has a son, Galahad. Guinevere, upon hearing of the affair, has Lancelot banished from the court. Lancelot then wanders from place to place in his grief. Elaine, through her father, heals Lancelot through the Grail, and he eventually returns joyously to Camelot and the Round Table. Lancelot introduces his son Galahad to the court, and Galahad takes the Siege Perilous, the seat at the Round Table that no knight has been worthy enough to fill. Galahad also draws the sword from the floating stone, establishing him as the best knight in the world, but also accepting the sword's curse, that it will later cause a grievous wound. Most of the knights then set out separately on the Grail quest. During this quest, Lancelot, Percival, and Bors experience deep religious conversion, while Ector and Gawain are told by a hermit that they are not pure enough to achieve the Grail quest. Galahad, Percival, and Bors meet up and continue the Grail quest, but they are briefly parted. Lancelot and Galahad continue to the Grail at Castle Corbenic, where Lancelot is shown to be unworthy of the quest. When Sir Evelake dies after his embrace with Galahad, Galahad is identified as the knight who will achieve the Grail quest. Galahad is made a king who dies shortly thereafter, while Percival becomes a hermit. Bors returns to King Arthur's court. Lancelot also returns to the court and continues his love for Guinevere. After a series of trials, Guinevere is convinced of Lancelot's love for her. Although Arthur knows of the affair and overlooks it, he is prompted by Agravain and Mordred, Arthur's son by Lot's wife, to take action. Guinevere is sentenced to be burned at the stake. Lancelot rescues her and takes her to his castle, Joyous Gard. But in the battle, Lancelot kills Gareth and Gaheris, who are at the execution but are unarmed. Lancelot returns Guinevere to Arthur, but Lancelot is banished along with his followers. Gawain swears vengeance for the death of his brothers and insists that Arthur attack Lancelot. Arthur agrees, but while Arthur and Gawain are away, Mordred makes himself King of England, claims Guinevere as his wife, and attacks Arthur's army. Gawain is mortally wounded and warns Arthur in a dream not to continue the battle. Through a misunderstanding, however, the battle continues. Arthur kills Mordred, but is mortally wounded by him, as Merlin prophesies. Lancelot and Guinevere both die of illness soon after, and Constantine becomes king. The Round Table is dispersed. From the synopsis I just read, I'm not really, I don't really feel negatively about what I have written about it, about Arthur and Merlin and the Knights. It doesn't seem like I changed much, I just left a lot out. To be fair, I'm not using the characters as much as you would think. I'm not going to spoil it, but they don't have a big role in the overarching story. So you don't have to worry about me, like, getting stuff wrong, or blah 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 blah, or doing something that character would never do, because I am gonna do that. It's not meant to be a retelling. It is every mythos, well, not every, because I can't possibly fit everyone, but a lot of mythos and fairy tales and legends, as if they were taking place in one world. In a world like Game of Thrones, which means there is going to be violence, there is going to be bloodshed, there's going to be less sexism though, and there's going to be less homophobia. Sorry about it. And I know a lot of you are going to say, well, that's not realistic. I don't think homophobia is realistic. I think that homophobia is a mental disease, to be honest. We can talk more about that in the later Teddy Bear Talks video. But for now, I'm glad I read that, and I hope you enjoyed it. I am going to be reading the full book when it comes out. And the next one of these I'm going to do is a synopsis of Alice in Wonderland. And if you recall, I did read the first chapter of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland on a video on my YouTube channel. I have since finished it on my own. But again, it is way too long for one video, and I want to do a full synopsis of that, as well as Alice Through the Looking Glass, and I believe there's a third one that I haven't read yet, which I'm really excited about. And I did just get a big book of Grimm's fairy tales, so I am going to be reading those on YouTube for you, And the only Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tale I have right now is The Little Mermaid, but I am going to get, hopefully, a big, thick book from Barnes & Noble of all of his works. So, I'm very excited about that. And I will link the trailer for Fairy Tales, well, it's not a trailer, it's a teaser, but I will link it for Fairy Tales Omnia Arcana up here, probably up here, because everything's mirrored. But I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please like and subscribe. I desperately need it. You can catch me on Facebook, on Tumblr, on Instagram, on Twitter at AuthorDCKnight, and I just appreciate you guys being here, and I love you, and I'll see you later.